Hello, my name is Tara C, and this is my visual analysis project for week 11, The Cold War. Called cold because it supposedly never heated up into actual conflict. It was more of an ideological war. For textbook chapter 23 thesis, here I have a propaganda poster from the time, The Red Menace is Real, report all suspected communist activity, and a poster for the Freedom Train, with the speech bubble freedom of speech being cut with a pair of scissors. Here is a picture of people, one of whom holds a sign saying needs help, and they're being swept under the rug. No documents that were deemed provocative or radical were included. The Freedom Train became a symbol of how the US was basically sweeping under the rug anything from its unsavory past that affected the present or that might suggest racial inequalities. The freedom to dissent was taken away. The Freedom Train revealed how the Cold War helped reshape freedom's meaning, identifying ever more closely with anti-communism, free enterprise, and the defense of the social and economic status quo. For the course reader, shocking masculinity of a Russian propaganda poster with a Russian fist smashing a US plane and boxing gloves, one for the US and one for the USSR. Nicholson argues that Milgram's study was actually about a perceived crisis of masculinity rather than an attempt to explain the horrific acts of the Holocaust. For the case study thesis, I have a picture of Gorbachev with a crumbling Soviet symbol, the Statue of Liberty atop a world where the red hand of communism fails to take a grip on the world. To visually illustrate the proposition that democratic culture was more resilient, flexible, and pragmatic, and capable of balancing multiple interests, and the communist culture was dogmatic, brittle, and inflexible, and demanded a single interest. And the Cold War was loaded with ironies. On the surface, we claim to be protecting democracy, but it's in reality we're promoting capitalism in a way that compromises democracy. Trying to promote capitalism abroad, we actually damage democracy at home. We have a boat here with capitalism tipping it over and money dangling over the state capital to represent how capitalism was ultimately damaging democracy at home. The US government cast the Cold War as a rather epic struggle between freedom and tyranny, which led to some remarkable political consensus. Both Democrats and Republicans supported most aspects of Cold War policy, especially the military buildup. The containment policy and Truman Cold War shaped domestic policy. Anti-communist sentiment, for instance, prevented Truman from extending the social policies of the New Deal. I do have a good friend who was born in the late 60s in Russia. So she said she was exposed to the Cold War personally from the other side. She said there was strong propaganda exposed from both sides. She said America had more arms, more rockets, more warships, more submarines. So the Soviets had to build more arms, more rockets, more submarines. Americans were portrayed as aggressors, very sure of themselves, businessmen, very profit-orientated, while Soviet people were pictured as very honest with high moral standards, helping the weak and working very hard to build a bright future for the future generations, all in accord with a friendly Soviet republic of all different nationalities. She said, as far as culture goes, American culture did have its influence, of course. The ideas of freedom, of possibilities for everyone, possibilities to do things that were impossible, such as travel around the world. She said the dancing and lifestyle in movies, not limited to cigars and gangsters, and clothing, all were unachievable and glamorous, and at times too superficial, but glamorous. She said the Soviets had its own culture, but right now it's being remade and replayed, she said, and that really everything is from a different perspective. That's why we have the one guy saying evil communist, Marxist, and the other guy saying evil capitalist fascist